boss thought he was swinging the hammer of authority by demanding a doctor's note for a simple fever, but he didn't realize he was handing me the nails to seal his own coffin, and the doctor was more than happy to provide the wood. The alarm clock on the nightstand didn't just ring, it screamed, a piercing digital shriek that felt like it was driving a heated needle straight through my temple. I slapped a heavy hand onto the plastic snooze button, the sound dying instantly, leaving only the wet, rasping sound of my own breathing in the sudden silence of the room. It was 6 a.m. The room was dark, the curtains drawn tight against the streetlights outside, but behind my eyelids, fireworks were going off, bursts of red pain and white dizziness. I tried to sit up. It was a mistake. The room tilted violently to the left, and a wave of nausea rolled through my stomach, hot and acidic. I collapsed back onto the sweat-soaked sheets. My skin felt like it was 2 sizes too tight, burning with a fever that had surely spiked overnight. This wasn't just being tired. This was the flu, the kind that settles into your marrow and makes your teeth ache. I reached for my phone, the screen brightness searing my eyes even on the lowest setting. Tuesday had been a struggle, a haze of brain fog and shivering at my desk while I tried to process shipping manifests, but I had pushed through. Today, Wednesday, my body had pulled the emergency brake. I navigated to the messaging app. The name Marcus sat at the top of my recent chats, a name that usually induced a mild stress headache even when I was healthy. Marcus was the kind of manager who believed that if you weren't at your desk 10 minutes early, you were late, and if you weren't typing, you were stealing from the company. He managed the logistics department of Apex Supply like it was a frontline trench in a war, not a warehouse distribution center for office furniture and bulk paper. I typed slowly, my thumbs clumsy. Marcus, I can't make it in today. Fever spiked overnight, dizzy, nausea, need a sick day to recover. I hit send and dropped the phone on my chest, closing my eyes. I just needed sleep. I just needed the room to stop spinning. The phone vibrated against my sternum less than 30 seconds later. I groaned, lifting the device. Marcus, this is the worst possible time, Elias. We have the Q1 distribution audit starting tomorrow. The floor is short-staffed as it is because Sarah and Mike are out. I need you here. I stared at the screen. The lack of empathy wasn't surprising. Marcus would probably ask a corpse to file one last report before the funeral, but the audacity still stung. Me, I understand, but I'm contagious and can barely stand up. I won't be useful. I need rest. The 3 dots appeared instantly. He was typing furiously. Marcus, look, per company policy, if you're calling out during a critical period, which this is, I need proof. You come in or you provide a signed doctor's note by end of business today. No note, no job. We can't carry dead weight. I read the text twice to make sure the fever wasn't hallucinating the words. A doctor's note. For a flu. He knew exactly what he was doing. Most of us at Apex were on high-deductible plans. Going to urgent care or a primary care physician for a simple viral infection was a waste of time and at least $100 out of pocket, not to mention the physical agony of driving there while the world was spinning. He was banking on me doing the math, suffer through the workday for free or pay money to suffer in a waiting room. He wanted me to fold. He wanted me to drag my infected body into the office so he could hit his numbers. Rage is a funny thing. Usually it burns hot, but when you're already burning with a fever, rage feels cold. It clarifies things. Me, a doctor's note. Okay, if that's the policy, I'll go get one. Marcus, good. If the doctor clears you for work, I expect you in by 1 p.m. I didn't reply. I tossed the covers off, the cold air of the room hitting my sweat-dampened pajamas like a physical blow. I shivered violently, my teeth chatting. This was going to be hell. Getting dressed took 20 minutes. Putting on socks felt like an Olympic event. I grabbed my keys and my wallet, my head pounding with every step. The drive to the clinic was a blur of red lights and aggressive horns. I drove 10 miles under the limit, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, terrified that a sudden sneeze would cause me to veer into oncoming traffic. I arrived at the urgent care center at 8:45 a.m. The waiting room was a petri dish of misery. A child was screaming in the corner, a man was coughing a wet, rattling cough into a handkerchief, and the television mounted on the wall was blasting a morning talk show at a volume that felt like a jackhammer. I signed in, my handwriting shaky. "Reason for visit?" the receptionist asked, not looking up from her computer. "Flu," I croaked, "and my boss requires a note." She looked up then, her eyes softening slightly as she took in my pale face and the sheen of sweat on my forehead. "Honey, you look like you should be in bed, not here. Copay is $50. I handed over my card, thinking about the groceries that $50 could have bought. I sat in a hard plastic chair, wrapping my coat tighter around myself and waited. And waited. It was 10:30 a.m. when they finally called my name. Elias. I shambled back to the exam room. The nurse took my vitals. Temperature 102.4. Blood pressure 150/95. "Blood pressure is high," she noted, scribbling on the chart. "Stress," I mumbled, "and rage, mostly rage." She smiled sympathetically and left. A few minutes later, Dr. Sylvia Harrow walked in. She was a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair cut into a sharp bob and a demeanor that suggested she suffered fools poorly. She looked at my chart, then at me. "You have the flu, Elias," she said bluntly. "It's viral. There's no magic pill. You need fluids, rest, and ibuprofen. Why are you clogging up my exam room?" It wasn't said unkindly, it was a practical question. She knew I knew the drill. "My boss," I rasped, coughing into my elbow. "He told me. No note, no job. Said I had to come in unless I had a signed excuse. He's expecting me back at 1 p.m. if you don't write it." Dr. Harrow stopped moving. She slowly lowered the stethoscope she had been holding. Her eyes, previously tired and professional, narrowed into slits of dangerous intelligence. "He said what?" she asked, her voice dropping an octave. "He said it's a critical period," I explained, leaning my head back against the crinkly paper of the exam table. "He thinks I'm faking. He told me to drive here, get a note, or get fired." Dr. Harrow turned to her computer, typing something. "So, let me get this straight. You are running a 102 fever, you are visibly shaking, you are clearly contagious, and this manager demanded you leave your house, putting yourself and others on the road at risk, to come here and waste medical resources to prove you are sick." "Yes, ma'am. And he wants you back at work. If you clear me." Dr. Harrow let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound of a predator spotting a wounded gazelle. She spun her stool around to face me. "Elias, what do you do for work?" "Logistics coordinator, open office plan, lots of talking, lots of shared equipment." "I see." She stood up and walked over to the counter, ripping a sheet of paper off her prescription pad. But she didn't write a prescription for medicine. She grabbed her pen, gripping it like a dagger. "I have been a doctor for 30 years, she said, her voice tight. "I have seen people work themselves into early graves because of petty tyrants like your boss. I have seen heart attacks at 40 because of critical periods. I am tired of it." She began to write. She wrote with aggressive, slashing strokes. "He wants a note," she muttered. "I'll give him a note. He wants to play medical professional. Fine, I'll play labor board." She scribbled for a solid minute, then stamped the paper with her official seal, a heavy thud that echoed in the small room. She ripped the top sheet off and handed it to me. "Read that," she commanded. I squinted at the paper. Medical order of absence. Patient Elias Thorne. Diagnosis: acute viral influenza, severe fatigue, hypertension induced by occupational stress. Directives: patient is highly contagious and immunocompromised. Under no circumstances is the patient to return to a workplace environment. Due to the severity of symptoms and the risk of spreading infection to the workforce, I am mandating a strict 14-day quarantine and recovery period. Patient is medically prohibited from working, including remote correspondence, to prevent cardiac strain. Return date 2 weeks from today. Signed Dr. S. Harrow, M.D. I looked up at her, my jaw dropping. 2 weeks. Dr. Harrow, I just have the flu. I'll be fine in 3 days. You have high blood pressure and severe exhaustion, she countered, crossing her arms. And you have a doctor who believes that if a boss demands a medical opinion, he is legally bound to adhere to it. If you go back before 2 weeks, you are going against medical advice. If he fires you for following a federally licensed doctor's orders after he demanded those orders, well, I imagine any employment lawyer would drool over that case. She smiled, a shark-like grin. Go home, Elias, turn off your phone, sleep. If he has a problem, tell him to call me. I'm in a fighting mood. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in years, despite the fever. The drive home was still miserable, but the envelope in my pocket felt like a loaded gun. I got home at 11:30 a.m. I collapsed onto the couch, pulled my laptop onto my lap and scanned the note. Then I opened my email. Subject: medical leave of absence, doctor's orders. To Brenda HR. CC Marcus. Hi Brenda. Per Marcus's demand this morning that I obtain a signed medical note to excuse my absence, I visited Dr. Harrow immediately. Please find the attached legal medical order. The doctor has mandated a strict 14-day quarantine due to severe illness and contagion risk. She was very specific that I am not to engage in any work duties to avoid cardiac strain and further health complications. I will see you all in 2 weeks. Regards, Elias. I attached the scan. I hit send. I set the laptop on the coffee table and crawled into bed. I needed to sleep, but the anticipation was keeping me awake. I stared at my phone on the nightstand. It took exactly 4 minutes. The phone rang. Marcus. I let it ring. It stopped, then rang again immediately. I let it ring. Then a text. Marcus, Elias, call me immediately. I didn't answer. I rolled over and pulled the duvet up to my chin. The fever was making me shiver again, but the satisfaction was warming my soul. Another text. Marcus, 2 weeks. Are you insane? We have the audit. You can't take 2 weeks off for a flu. The doctor is exaggerating. I need you on the conference call at 2 p.m. I reached out a shaky hand and typed a reply. Me, per the doctor's written orders, I am medically prohibited from working, including remote correspondence. I cannot risk the liability of going against a medical mandate, especially since you insisted I get one. Please direct all questions to HR. I turned the phone to do not disturb mode, but I set it to allow calls only from Brenda. I drifted into a feverish sleep. I dreamed of paperwork burning in a giant bonfire while Dr. Harrow danced around it shaking a stethoscope like a shaman's rattle. I woke up at 3 p.m. to the sound of my ringtone. It was Brenda. I cleared my throat, trying to sound as sick as I felt, which wasn't hard. Hello. Elias? Brenda's voice was crisp, but there was a distinct undertone of amusement. I received your email. Yes, I croaked. I'm sorry about the timing. Marcus insisted I go to the doctor. Oh, I know, Brenda said. I just got off the phone with Marcus. He's spiraling. I suppressed a chuckle which turned into a cough. I bet. He wanted to know if we could override the note, Brenda continued. I told him that since he made the demand for medical documentation a condition of your continued employment, we are legally obligated to respect the documentation you provided. If we forced you to work and you collapsed, or infected the whole floor during an audit, the liability would be astronomical, especially since the note specifies cardiac strain. Dr. Harrow was very thorough, I said. She certainly was, Brenda said. Marcus is trying to argue that he only meant a note for today, but the text logs he showed me clearly said doctor's note without specifying duration. You did exactly what he asked. So, Elias, you are officially on medical leave for 14 days. Do not log in. Do not answer emails. If Marcus tries to contact you about work, forward it to me. We take medical orders very seriously at Apex. Thanks, Brenda. Good luck with the audit. Oh, I'll be fine, she said lightly. Marcus, however, is going to have to learn how to process shipping manifests again. Get some rest. She hung up. For the first 3 days, I slept. The flu was genuinely nasty. I sweated through sheets, chugged Gatorade, and watched the ceiling fan spin. But by Saturday, the fever broke. I was weak, but I was coherent. Usually on a weekend before a big audit, I'd be checking emails, stressing about prep work, mentally organizing the week ahead. But I was legally banned from caring. I turned my phone back on to regular mode on Sunday morning. I had 43 unread messages in the group chat, which I had muted. I opened the chat to scroll through the wreckage. Wednesday, 2:15 p.m. Sarah, where is Elias? Marcus is running around the floor screaming about shipping codes. Wednesday, 3 p.m. Mike. Dude, Marcus just tried to log into the logistics server and locked himself out. He's asking if anyone knows Elias' password. Wednesday, 3:05 p.m. Sarah. Brenda from HR just came down. She told Marcus that accessing Elias' account while he's on medical leave is a violation of privacy policy. Marcus looks like he's going to explode. Thursday, 9 a.m. Mike, it's carnage. The audit team is here. They asked for the Q1 reconciliations. Marcus handed them a pile of unsorted invoices. The lead auditor actually laughed. Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Sarah. Marcus is literally doing data entry. I have never seen a man type with one finger so angrily. Friday, 4:45 p.m. Mike. Marcus just asked if I could drive to Elias' house and ask him a question. I told him I'm not getting the plague. I smiled, sipping my tea. It was glorious. On Monday morning, day 6 of my quarantine, I received a personal text from Marcus. Marcus, Elias, hope you're feeling better. Look, I know the note says 2 weeks, but we are drowning here. If you could just hop on a Zoom call for 30 minutes to explain the filing system to the temp, I'd appreciate it. I can pay you for a full day. I looked at the message. It was a trap. If I worked, I invalidated the severity of the note. Me, Marcus, I would love to help, but Dr. Harrow was very clear. Strict quarantine and no remote correspondence. If I work, I'm disobeying a medical order that you required. I can't risk my health or the company's liability. I'll see you next Wednesday. I didn't hear from him again. The second week was a vacation in the truest sense. I felt physically fine by Tuesday. I spent the days reading books I hadn't had time for in years. I cleaned my apartment. I cooked actual meals instead of microwaving frozen burritos. I realized just how burned out I had been. The high blood pressure Dr. Harrow mentioned wasn't just a tactic. I had been running on cortisol and caffeine for 3 years. I went for walks in the park, staying away from people just in case. I felt human again. The day of my return arrived. It was a Wednesday. I put on my collared shirt, grabbed my badge, and drove to work. The dread that usually accompanied the commute was gone. I felt bulletproof. I walked into the building at 7:55 a.m. The air in the office was thick with tension. The bullpen looked like a bomb had gone off. Stacks of paper were teetering on every surface. The whiteboard, usually kept pristine by me, was covered in frantic scribbles in red marker. "He's back," Sarah whispered from her cubicle as I walked past. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. "Elias, thank God." I reached my desk. It was buried under a mountain of files. "Elias." I turned. Marcus was standing at the door of his office. He looked terrible. His eyes were sunken, his shirt was wrinkled, and he had a stain on his tie. He looked 10 years older than when I last saw him. "Good morning, Marcus," I said cheerfully. "I'm fully recovered. Doctor gave me the all clear." He walked over to me, stopping just short of my desk. He looked at the pile of work, then at me. He opened his mouth to say something, probably to yell, probably to demand I stay late to catch up. But then he stopped. He seemed to remember the last 2 weeks. He remembered the auditors. He remembered the silence of my empty chair while the department crumbled. "Glad you're back," he muttered, his voice devoid of its usual arrogance. "Just start with the audit queries, please." "Will do," I said. He turned to walk away, then paused. "And Elias?" "Yes. Next time you're sick, just take the day, don't worry about the note." "Understood," I said, suppressing a grin. "I appreciate the flexibility." I sat down and logged into my computer. The screen flickered to life. I had 400 emails. It was going to be a long week, but for the first time in forever, I didn't mind. I had rested. I had won. And somewhere across town, I like to imagine Dr. Harrow was sipping her morning coffee, stamping a form and smiling. If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.